They get the foundation in?
We've got 46 yards in that little concrete.
Wow.
It's solid.
Yes.
It won't float away.
No, floating will not be a problem.
So is something being done when you're not there?
No.
Next spring again, huh?
And in early summer, we were working on my niece's place. She had a stroke at the end of January and had to sell her farm, and so her brother and I were doing a lot of work to get it ready.
Oh, wow.
So we got a slow start, but
So she had
It's
to
been
sell
going
the
well.
farm.
what's that?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
That was across the street, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Yeah. She misses it. She wants it back. She can't run a farm. But
You should-
I was hoping somebody in the family would.
so was she. She was hoping her brother would, but he wants to live in Mexico.
Oh, cheaper, huh?
Well, he's just attracted to the culture and the language, and he speaks Spanish and French,
And it's warmer.
and it's warmer, which he likes.
Well, where's your home that you're building?
What's that?
Oh, where's your home that you're building? Sorry.
In Southern Oregon.
Oh,
Yeah, on the Umpqua River, just half hour from the coast.
nice.
Yeah, it's a very nice spot.
Now, are you originally from there?
I am actually. I grew up in, an hour away,
Oh,
but also on the river. My parents bought a place on the river when I was 8. So that's where we grew up.
wow, all right, well, I'm happy for you.
So I know a number of people there, some that I went to school with.
Cool.
But we're not planning to move up there. Just summers.
Just summer getaway.
As long as we can, anyway, travel back and forth to maintain 2 places. We'll see how it goes.
For sure.
Morning, Dave.
Well, we still have the getaway.
Do you?
Yeah.
Yeah. How's things panned out?
Well, he turned his office into a studio apartment.
Oh.
And rented everything else.
Oh, you didn't sell your house?
No, I didn't,
Oh.
no, I just couldn't, no, I didn't get any offers, or any that I liked.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So, I just got a renter that I've known for years.
Oh,
So
that's
I feel comfortable with her.
good. Yeah. So it shouldn't be a lot of hassle.
No,
No. And then your office is a separate.
well, it's attached,
It's attached.
a separate.
Separate entrance and everything. Oh, nice. Good.
Has a great view.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I liked about it.
Oh, we'll have to get up and sometime when you're up there,
Yeah,
check it out.
you're welcome anytime.
Morning.
Hi, Lenny.
Hey, yeah. Fortunately, I brought one with me. 10:03.
Oh, all right. Does anybody else use Google Translate? Ken needs help after Sabbath. Because I can't find how to turn on his live conversation.
Oh,
And mine is a live conversation because it just pulls both languages up at the same time without talking to me.
I'm fine. Is yours an iPhone? Oh,
He's an Android. So I should have been able to help, but I hope that's not an element for today's Sabbath.
don't be looking for that kind of moment. No.
Boy. I thought I was really, I even went to bed early last night, which is an amazing thing, right? Except 2 o'clock in the morning. I got this little
We can rearrange.
I can, oh.
I agree, I'm with you on that.
I would much prefer to be down.
I know.
Others.
You're on a perch.
I think Greg has the live stream all set up this way, but we can set it up another way.
Okay. I did not approach it with him today because he was late, so I said, well, not this week, we'll try again some other time. All right.
We should all be so considerate of Greg.
I'm answerable only to God for me. What you guys do, is up to you. All right. Well, I think the first question that we have is, I have for you is, what do you know about Joshua to this point? We've had several weeks where we've studied Joshua, his activities, and if you only had a couple of descriptive words about Joshua, what would they be?
Faithful is the first one that pops up.
Okay, my left hearing aid battery's out, so Marlis, louder please.
Loyal.
Loyal, okay? Faithful and loyal, and primarily to whom?
The big guy upstairs.
Oh, the big guy, all right.
But also certainly Moses, right? We see him faithfully serving Moses.
Yeah, he was that too.
Okay, part of my problem is I go off on these little rabbit trails, right? But was he loyal to Moses for Moses, or was he loyal to Moses for God?
Not mutually exclusive.
No, not mutually exclusive.
I am loyal to Debbie for Debbie, but I'm also loyal to Debbie for God,
There you go.
which turns out to be more important sometimes.
Right, and he served faithfully during that time, and he did, and he undertook things that without him might not have progressed as they should have at that particular point.
Hey, if we were with the juniors, we would include qualities like strong, courageous, bold. I mean, and those are important.
Hang on to those, because you're going to use them today. So, today, however, we started this lesson back on the 15th, and it talked about the faithfulness of the giants of Joshua and Caleb. Now, Caleb hadn't really come into the conversation before, right? So he's going to come in, and it's a discussion, but what they start with in that review was something all parents are used to, and anybody who's dealt with little kids. You send them off to the best little kids in the world, it's a great thing, but they would come home with the bad habit. It didn't matter how great their friends were. If they had anything that was a little off from the behavior, my father would bring that one home. And we're not even going to talk about what the other kids took home from my house, right? I knew my kids, but it was always surprising that the one thing that the kids wanted to do or imitate happened to be the bad behavior. And the question about that was, well, why? In fact, Romans 7:15. Somebody have that? Well,
I do not understand what I do. For what I want to do, I do not do, but what I hate, I do.
okay, so when we consider that statement, there is a plaque that I purchased, maybe 15 years ago. And that plaque basically said, why do I do what I do when I know what I know? And it's true no matter what age we are, because our human nature, I think, is prone to self-gratification. And if something looks to be more fun, or if it looks to be forbidden, then that just is like a trigger saying, well, what's so forbidden about this? And that we have a need for role models. And that we have a need for role models in our environment when we're learning to walk and talk and we get older, in our roles as adults, whether they be at home, or whether they be in church, or whether they be at work. So today we're going to look at those, and we're going to look at those traits that we admire in others that help us grow into the adults that the Lord wants to see us grow into, not what we think that we need to grow. So, coming up on Sunday of last week, we had the story that was going to take up this particular, talking about Caleb and Joshua. And so with that, let us turn to Numbers 13:6. Anybody have that? Because I'm still looking. Numbers 13:6. No?
So these were the spies that were being sent
Yes.
out to scout out the land?
First thing I want to talk about is verse 6.
From the tribe of Judah, it was Caleb, son of Jephunneh.
Okay. So, from the tribe of Judah, that caught my attention, right? Hang on to that, and remembering that Rahab wound up as part of the tribe of Judah, that is, and her faithfulness, her belief, that didn't require a direct, she believed because she had heard about God and all the magnificent things that he had done for the Israelites. And with that, she was fully incorporated into the tribe, right? Mother of Boaz. And from there, the history gets even more exciting. So here we are with the son. But back a bit, what he said is that Moses was commanded by God to select what kind of men from each of the tribes. What was their station in life? Leaders. And so the question becomes, why? Why do you think God had chosen men from the leaders? He didn't really care. Moses did it, I think. They needed to be leaders. Why leaders?
Because they'd have a larger influence on the tribe. They were leaders because people followed them, right? And so they represented more than just themselves personally.
All right. With that, when I say the word leader today, what do you think of? What characteristics do you think of for leaders?
Well, I get a really mixed bag.
I think we all can.
All right, let's talk theory. We're not going to go to personalities at this point. What could a leader be? What should a leader be in that optimal world?
Somebody that can see a bigger picture, and
So vision.
and capacity to motivate and draw people out to be their best selves.
Okay, inspirational,
Trustworthy.
trustworthy,
Dependable.
committed, absolutely,
Dependable.
Has great influence.
influential, and how they get there. Well, in the world, I don't know anybody in here knows this, but my doctorate is in leadership. So, in what the world considered leadership. But during that time when I was studying, it was a blessing to me because I ran across some new ideas that were out, and this was called servant leadership. There was a guy by the name of Robert Greenlee who had 48 years at AT&T. He had worked for 48 years. And ultimately started a little institute to try to convey to people that corporate America was doing it all wrong. Because typically corporate America was about money, the almighty greed that was there, or that the leaders of those companies were doing it for self-gratification for their own benefit. Robert Greenlee had this idea that that model, which you can find multiple models out there, but they were all top down. That there was a leader, he had a few counselors, people under him was lucky, but everybody else under, no matter what the organization is, whether it's a school or whether it's a church, whether it's a family or whether it was a corporation, everybody else below that served the leader, served management. And Robert said, you're doing it wrong. The most important part of organizations are the people. And what we should be doing first is serving those people first. So, somebody else came along by the name of John Maxwell, and the idea of looking through the Bible to the greatest servant of all would take us right to the Lord himself. But in the Bible, there's all these statements about how to lead. And so servant leadership has a small following, but it still has a following. Because the very first principle of that is to serve, and serve first. The next is to share power. So you collaborate, you get input, you truly care about what the people are saying that are working with you or in the community with you. You really want to hear what they have. And then try to make things better for them, not for yourself. The third thing is empathy, right? That you do have a great empathy for what is going through or in the lives of those people in the organization.
I'm glad to hear in America, here we could collaborate and help each other, but in a nation like Russia, China, or North Korea, how to worship a god, but it's not Yahweh like Putin, he's the god of Russia. Kim Jong-un, that's not a real god, but it's someone that wanted to be worshipped, but he's a North Korea's leader.
Well, even in places that are not free to worship the Jesus we know, people still get together in organizations or in groupings, in families of believers, and they serve each other. So this servant leadership, everybody's a leader.
Yes.
And we all have someone that we are relating to in some way to help or to direct or to guide. So we all have these possibilities because number 4, they bond the community. When everyone is engaged and everyone is respected and their opinions are respected, then they feel like they have a safe place to discuss things, right?
Yeah. In Russia, you could have a church, but the church had to serve Putin like if he's a god, like he'll let you live only if you let Jesus go. When in truth, here in America, we're free to pick and choose churches or even be politically free not to have a church. But I'm glad that's not Russia that we're in.
All right, so that pretty much ends most of what I'm going to say about leadership. It was really hard to stop there because in the world system, those programs I told you about what defines a leader, what do you think that leader should be, there's one that has 3 basic principles or characteristics, one that has 4, 5, 6, 12, you know, you get the picture, one with 21 different characteristics. But in the end, what we have to say is, what is the purpose of those leaders? And in this particular case with Caleb and Joshua, what's the purpose of them being with these other 10 guys? What's the purpose? It was a pretty simple purpose, wasn't it? To go out into the promised land. Do we need to read that? To go out into the promised land and to bring back a report. Now, what kind of report might they want to know about the people? Because they're really supposed to be serving the people. So what are those people? What will they want to know about? Well, let's see. I think it's Joshua 13:1.
13:1, you said?
Maybe not, guys. Okay, maybe that's what it's
Is it Numbers 13?
That could be.
I see here it says, see what the land is like, and whether the people who live there are strong or weak, few or many. What kind of land do they live in? Is it good or bad? What kind of towns do they live in? Are they unwalled or fortified? How is the soil? Is it fertile or poor? Are there trees in it or not? Do your best to bring back some of the fruit of the land. It was the season for the first ripe grapes.
Okay, so let us go to 13:30 through 32.
People.
Numbers.
Numbers 13.
Well, I guess, okay. So here are all these groups before we go there. Before we go, Numbers 13:6 was where Moses, and the purpose was to send the current leaders to report back on the conditions, as you stated, and these men that are going are leaders. So hopefully they have experience, right? They have experience with what each of those tribes needs, their expectation. They know the people. They know how many people there are and how many cows they have and so forth and so on. Experience means a lot for the leader. And remember, one of the things that we were told in our lesson is that leadership is a lifelong process, a lifelong training, a lifelong set of experiences. And that's the reason we're cautioned not to have new converts as leaders, right? They don't have all the background necessary to make a wise and solid choice. But hopefully they have role models around them who are very willing to talk and help and educate them into the fold before they become leaders. They had the experience of what God had done for them, right? These leaders had been with Moses. They'd come through the Red Sea. They were ready. They had knew the history. They knew that God had promised land. What kind of land?
Can't remember how it was said, but it's fruitful.
A land that flows with milk and honey.
Yeah.
Meaning fruitful, fertile, right? That it's going to be good for people and animals. So they had commitment. These leaders had commitment to their people. They had competence because they were the leaders, and self-awareness about what part they played, and confidence to go forward.
Parents.
So, Caleb's name, by the way, did you catch that? What does Caleb's name mean? Dog. Any dog owners here? What are the characteristics of your dog? Loving.
Our dog is loyal.
Loyal. What else? Ever had your dog protect you from something?
Yeah,
Like a rattlesnake those things need to be true in our leaders. So let us go then to, let's see, I need Numbers 13, and it was 30, 32. Yeah, go ahead and go to Numbers 13, 30, 32.
Then Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, "Let us go up at once and take possession, for we are well able to overcome it." But the men who had gone up with him said, "We are not able to go against these people, for they are stronger than we are." And they gave the children of Israel a bad report of the land which they had spied out, saying, "The land through these which we have gone as spies is a land that devours its inhabitants. And all the people who we saw, they are men of great stature."
And
Then,
that's,
do you want me to go on or just 30?
no, that's good.
Pardon?
That's good for right now. That's good for right now. All right, so what had the men said? That's what Caleb responded. But what was he responding to? What was the report? 10 people saw that land.
They'd scare you.
It was scary. They instilled fear, Jerry.
The balance wasn't quite the same as the charge they were given. It's, well, yeah, good land, but oh, when they're so big, they're so strong, and we can't possibly take this land because of those who own it already.
So the first thing I think about when I read through that was, they're so full of the shouldn'ts and couldn'ts, right? That they saw with human eyes. And human reasoning says, and take it from somebody who's less than 5 feet tall, that if they're big, then they are intimidating. And these guys were 9'5" at one point, right? But they were looking at the arms created by man. They were looking at the created, not at the creator who said, you know, I'll take care of you. Isn't that what God said?
Yes.
I'll be there. I'll lead you. And then, later, of course, we saw what happened at Jericho. But the bottom line is, they didn't have the confidence. Maybe there was a little bit of the humanity. Well, first of all, what did they bring back as evidence of the land of milk and honey? Do you recall?
Gigantic grapes.
Yeah,
They
great.
had grapes, they had figs, they brought back pomegranates. They were feasting on this fresh and luscious fruit.
Yeah.
But no, we can't do anything about that. Those walls are so thick, their walls are protected. And they just, of a consensus. But now here is Caleb, our fiercely loyal to God dog or leader, as the case may be. And he stood up and says, wait, we need to go in right now. What does that tell you about Caleb's faith?
Courageous
He's courageous,
and bold.
bold in the word.
What he listened to God's word. God said, you have to go in there, you have to take that land. And Caleb wasn't taking no for an answer from no one. He's going to do what the Lord has said.
The Lord said it, I believe it, let's do it.
That's right.
He was a man of action, not much of a speech maker, as it turns out. We don't have any lengthy discourses for Caleb.
So,
But we should go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it. Man of action. And he was able to silence the people because he was respected for who he was, what he had done.
well, he silenced them until they had something else to say.
I wonder if they put that on his tombstone. We should go up and take possession of the land. For we could certainly do it. That would do right there.
There you go. You're right. Caleb knew. He knew the history. He had the oral histories. He had the written history. He knew that God had promised them this land.
Yeah.
God had made no bones about that. And no pun there, continue with the dog. So, but the bottom line is, he knew it was time to do it. He had been seen. And what evidence did they have, those other people really have, that they wouldn't win? Did they have any? Did they lose anybody? They were in the promised land for 40 days, going in all directions, and not one of them is reported to have been hurt or accosted in any way. And yet they said, just by the sight of my eyes, I'm going to say that we shouldn't do this, that this is dangerous.
And another thing that grieved Caleb and Joshua's heart was the people wasn't believing in God's word. And that grieved their heart.
We've seen a lot of the distance that is between, at least I think, between what God had presented, what Moses felt, what Joshua felt, what the leaders felt, and all those people under them. And I think somebody asked, was it 3 weeks ago, about the leadership. And so we begin to see that, you know, there's a couple of other types of characteristics good leaders should have. Communication, for one. So maybe the communication could use some work. Persuasion, you know, the ability to talk so that people understand and be convinced of consideration, that they need to maybe consider what you're actually saying. And so we have some of modern leadership characteristics that we could say, well, that needed to be worked. But right now, what those other men did was to create a situation of fear right away. But the why of that still eludes me. Were they comfortable in their current setting? Did they secretly really didn't mind going back to Egypt? I mean, you know, give me a break. They had all of that time and all those things that had been happening, and yet here, they had a chance to put trust in God and go forward. And they collectively decided not to. As a result, the people that they served decided that maybe the best thing to do would be to stone Caleb and Joshua. So why didn't they succeed? Do you recall that?
Well, they were just trying to have unity, right?
Trying to have you.
That's a fallacy that there is all unity in, you know, servant-led organizations too. But the bottom line is they, it was the glory of God. God himself stopped the stoning. And the glory of God did it, because that was not what he fully intended. So in some ways, it's like God wanted those leaders, those very same leaders that were going to inherit the promised land. He gave them one more chance to stop the mummerings. He gave him one more chance to stand for him. And 10 out of the 12 didn't make the cut.
What happened to those two brothers who tried to take out Moses and Aaron? They went underground real fast.
That's right. That's right. So, when Caleb stood up with that different report, and the people turned against him, they might have respected him before, but, you know, what kind of respect is ready to kill you? I don't know how deep that respect really was. It was almost like a convenience of respect.
Respect combined with resentment, it's not all that uncommon.
Ah, that's a good point. And that crossed my mind too, is that you mull things over enough, you tear at them, you try to find reasoning, and things like that resentment. I mean, God had been so faithful in their positions within that community, you know, and there's always people ready to the people had become enraged. And this was because it was a stark contrast to the fact they were fear-driven. Caleb had peace. Joshua had peace. And in opposition to that peace, the people had the fear, and they were letting the fear drive their choices. Secondly, it was a contrast between their faith and the rebellion, or the belief in God and the respect they had for their own understanding of what had happened, their own knowledge base. But it sounds kind of familiar if you ever are in situations where you stand for your own faith. And when you say something to non-believers, there are a couple of ways they appear to react, right? What's one of them, Mary? When you say something to a non-believer, what is the reception?
Some of them say, oh, yeah, I know about Jesus, I'm good. You know, they just, and some of them react in a really good way. Like, a couple of days ago, I was walking out of the store and I saw this lady sitting in her car, and she had her window down cracked a little bit, and I said, you are a beautiful lady. And she said, thank you. And we just chatted just a second. I got back in my car, and you know, I carried all the steps to Christ around in my car. And I go, oh, I'm gonna give her one. And I handed it to her. I said, here's a good book to read while you sitting there waiting. She looked at it, she go, oh, I love Jesus. I just love Jesus. I just love Jesus. Thank you so much. Some of them were good and some of them were like, I don't want to hear it.
Anybody else have different type of responses? Okay, I'm feeling kind of lonely. Because I have some, and maybe it's the closer they are to you, the more license they feel they have, they either scoff, pie in the sky, fairy tale stuff, or they get angry,
Yes.
really
Yes.
angry. And I've never quite understood the really angry for somebody that vows to be an atheist. If they don't believe, then why do they care so much? Just the name of God, Jerry.
Oh, you reminded me of Adventist missionary who was serving in Rwanda, a friend of mine, who was there during the genocide and quit believing in God and became very militant about not believing in God, always posting stuff on social media and reaching out in angry ways to his former friends. And we don't know the people that we bump into casually if they've had that kind of experience and have been broken by it. Only God knows. That's why he has us do things that sometimes seem foolish to us, because he sees the bigger picture. He knows how to take care of the situation. Big situation and the little one too.
The older I get, the more I appreciate the idea of the leadership issue, the role model issue.
My son-in-law believes that following Jesus or believing in God is just a crutch. That, it's a crutch that you don't need because we all have the power within us to be good people. And we don't need, my little granddaughter was with me one day and we were talking about Jesus in heaven. They don't let me take her to church, but when she was with me, we were talking about it. And I was telling her about heaven and that someday Jesus was going to come back and take people that love him to heaven. And she goes, well, I love Jesus. So she gets home and she goes, Jesus is coming back, and when he comes back, he's gonna take me to heaven. And her dad goes, well, I don't believe in Jesus. And she goes, well, you'll just have to stay here.
What a cute response.
There'll be some reflection over that.
Okay, obviously we need to go to Monday. There's some kids down here. So on Monday, it was about, the hill country. By the way, do you know how large the promised land was between the borders? 300,000 acres. 300,000 square miles, sorry. And you know how much they actually had inhabited over the years? 30,000 square miles. I found that fascinating, that there's all this land that has been promised to them, and yet they were content with 30,000. I don't know whether that represents the largesse of God's promises, how much there is that he wants to give us, and that we attend, you know? Just a tenth of what the Lord has. Kind of like the capacity of using our brains, right? Our brains have so much more capacity than we ever get around to using. Anyway, okay, so we're going to be splitting up here, and do you remember, we could take time to read the verses if you like, but who was the first person to make a claim?
Caleb, he was eager to get going.
He had a promise, did he not? That after all that almost being stoned and saving him, bottom line is, he was going to have the property where he had gone. And all of that was going to be his. And here he is, 45 years later. Right?
Yep.
And he's carried that promise along now. We have some indication that he probably talked to it about to his children, for instance, in the next day's lesson. But what we have is this idea, my idea anyway, that he had this knowledge and he acted on it at the first opportunity. And again, he had the confidence, the boldness, the courage to just step forward and say, by the way, God's promised me this one specifically. Now, he really hadn't promised anybody else anything except the ones that stayed over on the other side. So everything else was open to be divided except Caleb went forward with his promise.
And he was 85 years old.
And he was 85. Now, we have some indication he was a spry 85. Like Ken, he's out there doing his thing. And so, right.
He was a spry 85 at a time when your lifespan was 120 versus our current 75. 85 out of 120, you're basically 2/3 of a life through, versus you're overdue for dying when you're 85, when your average age is 75.
Careful now there, David.
Lacey,
Caleb inherently understood that the territories that were going to be divided to the tribes was correlated proportionally directly to the faith that those tribes had exhibited in following God's plan. And he wanted to make sure that he had a good, solid recognition. And the part that he has, it had the fortress, right, of the giants. He had that armor. And at first, him stepping up like that was almost like an in-your-face moment. It's like, I want this one. But what he was doing was acknowledging that his God had overcome those obstacles to that land that all those other men had said we couldn't do, and he wanted to show it was. Okay, so into the power of examples. Right? So how about Joshua 15:16 through 19?
And Caleb said, I will give my daughter Escala in marriage to the man who attacked and gathered Goliath Zephyr. Othniel, son of Kenaz, Caleb's brother, took it. So Caleb gave his daughter Escala to him in marriage. When she came to Othniel, she urged him to ask her father for a field. When she got off their donkey, Caleb asked her, what can I do for you? She replied, do me a special favor. Since you have given me land in the Negev, give me also springs and water. So Caleb gave her the upper and lower springs.
Do you think boldness might be inherited? Don't you find that really quite fascinating that, first of all, the example of Caleb, how he had lived his life, his boldness, his encouragement, and his courageousness to do things for the Lord. So here, they inherit a field, and then she immediately, it appears, rides over, gets off her donkey, and says, but what did she need water for?
Growing stuff in the negative. It's a desert. Yeah.
It's a desert, but the symbology, the symbolism of that to me has to do with the water, the living water. That's what would bring life to that desert, that would sustain their people, right? And not just a little, 2 springs. If you're up north, you'll drink. If you're down south, you'll drink. So we have that symbolism, that courage to step out and make that claim, a request, so that her people would prosper, right? Isn't that what God said back? One of the other quarters, he goes, you know, I want you to be to the nations. So they look at you and say, this God of the Israelites. And he takes care of them, he prospers them. And if she just had desert, she wouldn't grow anything. A few cacti, I guess. So go to Hebrew 13:7. Anybody have that?
Hebrews 7. Got it.
13:7. Yes, please do.
Remember them which have the rule over you, who have spoken unto you the word of God, whose faith follow. Consider the end of their conversation. Is that the right one?
Did it? I couldn't hear my hearing.
You said Hebrew 13?
7.
Uh-huh.
About imitating?
Yes.
Okay, we got it. Thank you. All right, so God tells us that we need to be, imitate the faith. Now, other translations of the Bible say follow that faith, but this imitate really goes along So rather than having kids as a secondary thought, are we allowing them to be and feel like full-fledged members of our congregation? And those are questions that I think we really need to examine. I have a burden after 35 years in higher education. I have a burden for young people because I've seen so many of them disappear over the hill. Even those that had good starts, somehow they didn't have a safe place to ask the questions they needed to ask and be treated like a young adult. And so we're told and commanded to give those and imitate the faith of our fathers, but in such a way as not being a second-class citizen. Many times I've heard the expression, God has no grandchildren, right? He has sons and daughters. And so from the very get-go, these cute little babies, they are already a son of God. We just have to help them grow into that servant and opportunities to grow into that service.
Donna,
Yes.
I think this is a really essential point in this whole series of lessons that we've been going through, because we've been looking back at these practices of God's people and Canaan. We think, well, how much does that relate to us? And the things you've highlighted about Caleb and Aksa, was that his daughter, you know, and their boldness and their lives of faith. That's what we should be focusing on. That's what we want to get our children, the next generation, to focus on too, is the faith. But oftentimes we're so more concerned about passing on our cultural practices. I look back at Caleb, and there were some cultural practices there in these stories that I don't want to perpetuate. I'm not going to offer my daughter to the man who conquers the city, and I'm not going to let that man be my brother. And I don't think those are lessons. Surely those are not lessons that we're asked to, to carry out of this story. There are so many of the cultural details of these stories that are not worth carrying on in a modern context. We need to look with the kind of vision that Caleb had and that Joshua had, and to distill the kernel of faith at the heart of all those actions and emulate that in our lives, I think. And we need to encourage that in our children.
I'm 100% with you.
I have a son in